Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio Early Breakfast.
18 minutes past 5, and the front page of the Times has got the news that Labour want to crack down on benefit fraudsters as the front page. Conferences dominating the headlines. The Daily Telegraph says the Prime Minister says there is light at the end of the tunnel. The Guardian takes the perspective of saying the Prime Minister vows to end the gloom as Labour seeks to lift spending restrictions. The Mail says union boss says we'll seize control of the UK economy, saying union barons yesterday vowed to seize control of the economy now that their Labour friends are in power. Let's go through these stories in a bit more detail. Andrew Eborn, the Barrister broadcaster, is here. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. Always a delight to join you.
There's quite a lot of crime stories inside the papers today, and a really interesting, I'm sure, proposal that's going to cause some controversy inside. Criminals could be denied internet access instead of being sent to prison. This is the suggestion of a senior police officer. Tell us what it is.
Well, what it is, I mean, the headline is slightly misleading because you assume that, oh my goodness, you can't put all these horrendous sort of violent criminals, basically, they need to be off the streets. The way that punishment works, there are three aspects to it. One is the punishment for the crime you've done, the other is the rehabilitation, and the third is the sort of basically warning to others to basically prevent others following that sort of particular lead. What the suggestion is here is that certain criminals will be denied internet access instead of being sent to prison. So effectively, looking at the figures, there's a record high of 88,521 prison population at the moment, with fewer than 100 cells available. Now, certain crimes where people are basically using, if you like, their mobile phones or the internet to commit those, obviously, if you take that away, that's a human right for a lot of people. So they're looking at that particular side. And that's how it's going to work. They're looking at a range of ways whereby they try and keep a check on offending behaviour, effectively to keep the community safe.
So the idea, this is Gavin Stevens. He's chairman of the National Police Chiefs Council. He said limiting an offender's internet use could act as a virtual prison and help to keep communities safe. I mean, do you think that would work?
Well, it depends on the crime, doesn't it? I think the reality is, well, it's going back to what I said at the beginning.
If it was like online fraud, maybe, but you know.
Exactly. That's why you need to look at it. If it's a habitual online fraudster and you stop them, and it's a horrendous crime, where Moira Stuart will be talking about that later, but it's exactly that sort of stuff. But no, clearly violent criminals just taking away their mobile phone and you can't have access to the internet is not appropriate. And that's why I think you need to do a deeper dive. For certain types of criminals, if they effectively take away the tools of their criminality and they use their phone or accessing the internet to commit those crimes, then that's absolutely right. But the question is it a deterrent? And that's what you've got to look at as well. It's those three aspects, as I said beforehand: the punishment, the deterrent, and also rehabilitation. And that's the other thing they're saying, because the prisons are so crowded, they're not getting a chance now to basically do the rehabilitation side of it, where people are trained in prison for certain extra skills and so on and so forth. So that's important as well when looking at it.
Yeah. You mentioned Moira Stuart, just a page further forward in the Times. She said a bank scam nearly cost me a fortune. She, I think, like many of us, thought, I'm really aware of scams. And then the sort of psychological techniques that were used against her completely blinded her to what was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so what happened? She received a phone call at 9 o'clock one morning, apparently from her bank. She thought, oh my goodness, it must be the bank because she's ex-directory. Not many people have her number. And she was told that there was a problem, but somebody from her branch was basically trying to commit fraud and was accessing her account. So she was told to go along to another branch and to follow the instructions. But when she got there, the bank teller very wisely said, hang about, this doesn't sound right. It sounds as though you're being conned. So they were sort of fortunately stopped very, very early on.
She was on the phone to the fraudster who said, you need to go to your bank branch, stay on the phone to me. Yes. And when she got there, they said, this sounds fraud. I mean, it is terrifying how sophisticated these have got, that you can get totally caught out to the sum of, tens of thousands in some cases.
Oh, and you're absolutely right. And nearly 3 million instances of bank fraud, which costs a combined 1.2 billion, were recorded last year, which is equivalent to about 400 quid each. And it's getting worse, actually, Rosie, because what's happening is with my baby, the artificial intelligence, you can fake voices. So you can sound as though you're a relative, you can sound as though you're a bank manager, you can sound as though that, and it's all done with this incredible artificial intelligence. So the biggest thing is watch out there. It's not safe. And you get people like Moira Stuart, well done fun for her talking out. Don't be embarrassed about it. Lots of people are conned, and the more people that can shine a spotlight on this, the better.
Yeah. Harrods, the story in most of the papers this morning. Harrods has said yesterday they're investigating whether any of the staff currently there were involved in the alleged sexual abuse of what has now transcribed to be dozens of women who've made these allegations by Mohammed Al Fayed. Just tell us, with your legal hat on, Andrew, he's dead. How difficult is it to secure something like a criminal conviction now, after the fact, when these allegations have been made?
Well, it is incredibly difficult, and it obviously was very, very difficult during his lifetime. I saw the harrowing, and the harrowing's the word I would use, documentary. I saw, all of it, and all the horrible testimonies of these poor victims. And my thoughts are always for the victims in this, who came forward and talking about the abuse that they suffered, sometimes over several years. You wonder why people stayed in a job for 5 years so they were suffering this abuse. But what came out in that documentary was that actually, basically, there were people who were on the payroll of Harrods who basically facilitated some of this. The allegation is that they would help cherry pick young women and facilitate his sexual abuse. And if people complained, well, sometimes there were threats, sometimes they were sort of turning a blind eye and so on and so forth. What's happened, Harrods have made it very clear, look, this is a terrible era. We want to come forward and put things right. It seems to be like a sort of confession, if you like. So there's lots of information there. There's all sorts of questions, not least, obviously, Keir Starmer. People, a bit of pressure on him as well. What did he know, or what was he told at the CPS when he was there? Because there were a few allegations, and they clearly weren't followed all the way through. They were saying there wasn't sufficient evidence, but the evidence which is coming out now, as I say, is harrowing, and there's going to be more questions asked. I'm sure.
And should Harrods be the one answering that? Because Harrods say they're investigating whether staff were involved. Does it not need someone independent of Harrods to run that investigation?
And that's it, exactly. As always, Rosie, you hit the nail on the head. It's very difficult. You sort of, we'll do our own self-investigation. I always say that trust comes in on foot but leaves on horseback. You need to see what the procedure is. Every organisation has to say, look, this is the procedure that happens when people investigate these claims, and they have to be done properly. The victims deserve it. But exactly, the spotlight is on them. Anybody who advises, and I talk to lots of companies about these sort of things, about damage limitation and so on and so forth. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Work out the policy, work out what's happened. Who knew what? That's what we need to find out.
Yeah. Now, the Telegraph are talking this morning about, those price... When you go to the supermarket, and particularly in Tesco's, it says sort of Aldi price checked, with the same price here. Turns out some research has been done to say, well, the price might be the same, but the quality and the content of what you're buying is not. So, the chicken nuggets might cost the same at Tesco's and at Aldi, but at Aldi you get significantly more chicken in your chicken nuggets.
Well, you're absolutely right. The suggestion is some of these things have barely been introduced to anywhere near a chicken. So this is the accusation. There was a survey done by BBC Panorama, the brilliant programme, 122 Tesco's products, and they found that nearly a third contained less than 5% points less than the main ingredient when compared to the counterpart. And the chicken nuggets that you mentioned contained only 39% chicken. 39% chicken for the Tesco's, but Aldi's had 60% chicken, the investigated found. And also the Aldi's chicken Kiev, as they used to be called, basically contained 57% chicken compared to Tesco's 44%. So you need to work out, what are you actually buying? When you'll say our chicken is significantly cheaper, well, cheap, you can turn around, it's because you've been skimping on the chicken. That's the reason.
Yeah, well, Tesco said, we constantly review the quality of our products, and we have clear processes in place to ensure the hundreds of products that are included are comparable with those sold at Aldi. So the sort of suggestion here is to actually just go to Aldi, I would say, the result of this BBC Panorama piece. Final thing I want to ask you about, Andrew, a piece in the Times today. Give you my plumber's number. Yes. I'd rather give you my bank password. I woke up to a text this morning that said, I've just done my kitchen, that said, could you send the details of your workmen and any other bathroom workforce? They are gold dust when you find a good builder.
Oh, you're absolutely right. What it is, Rosie, is the UK needs an extra 1.3 million tradespeople to meet demand over the next decade. And that's what happens. So Checker Trade says that hundreds of thousands of customers have to wait months, sometimes even more than a year, to secure a builder, plumber, a heating engineer, a roofer, or plasterer, or even carpenter. All of these jobs are basically on the Home Office shortage occupation list. And so we're losing the skills. And as a result of it, people, if you find a good one, fill the builder, as they call them now. Well, the days when you used to get a couple of Bosnians out of the pub, as they say in the article, are long gone. Lots of skills are in shortage at the moment, which is why, as the brilliant writer points out, they'd rather give away their bank password. Well done, Robert Crampton. A brilliant point, but it is a problem. We need to address it. And lots of people who are looking for jobs at the moment, get some skills in those sort of areas. If you can, find out what's happening, because there's obviously clearly a job shortage there, a job availability there, but it's a shortage of skills.
A good plumber is utter gold dust. Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew Eborn,
Thanks
the
a lot,
barrister
Rosie.
and broadcaster, going through the papers with me.